I remember getting that phone call, one that had my emotions feeling like I was drowning. It was a call from my mother in law to tell me that her brother had committed suicide. I had to call my husband and give him that news. Suicide loss survivors suffering the loss of a loved one will go through many stages of grief and healing. In this speech, I want to go over some facts about suicide and the suicide loss survivors. Starting with the statistics of suicide and those left behind. Next, I will go over the stages of grief and healing. And finally, I will go over my own personal experiences. The following statistics will give details on the epidemic of suicide. From Crisis, the Journal of Crisis Intervention and Suicide Prevention, published in 2019, approximately 1 million people die by suicide worldwide every year. Approximately 25 people will be impacted for every one suicide. That means 25 million people, approximately. Those are staggering numbers. All those people possibly suffering with PTSD. From the same journal, but a different issue, published in 2017, they were discussing a study done in 2014 that said the highest suicide rates were in the Mountain West region states. And I quote, in 2014, of the 8 states with the highest age-adjusted suicide rates, Montana, Alaska, New Mexico, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, and Nevada, 7 are in the Mountain West region. End quote. That makes me worried. Wyoming is one of those states. Makes me wonder how many people in Wyoming are suffering with that loss. With that in mind, now that I've gone over the statistics, I want to move on to the different stages of grief. When feel the stages of grief, I imagine it's probably similar for most situations. It's hard seeing your loved ones go through this. You want to be able to make all the pain go away, and you can't. But you can help them by being part of the support system that allows them to heal. And it's pertinent because as they heal, you heal too. According to Lever and Cataldo in their article, they list stages of grief as shock and or denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance. They also stated, and I quote, grieving is not a linear process, end quote. What they meant by this is that the person suffering the grief will have their ups and downs, and they will bounce through the different stages of grief. You can help them through it though. And it's important that they know it's okay to ask for help. I also found another quote in the same article. It states, and I quote, death from suicide complicates grief by adding possible feelings of shame, blame, or guilt, or unanswered questions as to the deceased's reasons, to the other painful emotions associated with bereavement, end quote. This leads me to my final point, my personal experiences. I was able to see many emotions played out in different ways from different people. Some of them, they'd only wanted to remember the good times and laugh at his goofy antics. Others were sad, but they chose to hide it behind a smile. Those of us closest to our uncle, though, we had all the ups and downs. His sisters and brothers were closer than they had been in a while. There were a few, though, that were racked with tremendous guilt because they were there that night and they were unable to prevent it. Nobody thought he would commit suicide. He was always so full of life and smiles, and he always had a joke ready to go. But I can attest to the fact that healing does happen. It takes a while, but it is possible. And now, a few years later, we're all able to look back and smile because we know that somewhere out there, He's watching over us and laughing at us. And in conclusion, I was able to talk to you today about suicide loss survivors. I was able to share some of the statistics, the stages of grief, and finally, my own experiences. I hope none of you will ever be a suicide loss survivor. And if you are, or already have been, just remember, it does get better. Thank you.